All right, if we can, we're going to call the meeting to order. First of all, just thank Mayor O'Connell for filling in at the last meeting. Sorry I couldn't be here. Thank you for doing that, Vice Chair. First order of business is approval of minutes. Have everybody reviewed it? If so, do I have a motion? Second. Any changes, deletions, corrections? All in favor say aye. All opposed. Next up is our public comment section. Anyone here wishing to address the board this morning under public comments? Seeing none, we move to our action items. We have two on the list this morning, both of which require a public hearing. So first of all is resolution TBB 2025-010. Anyone here wishing to speak on that resolution? Seeing none, first order, we're going to let's just go ahead and get it on the floor first, and then we'll turn it over to Taylor Lee. Do I have a motion and a second? Have a motion. We have a second to get it on the floor. I'm going to turn it over to Taylor and let him explain what we're doing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today we have a good-sized amendment package. We have 15 amendments for your consideration and review today. As we go, this is another update as we go. There usually is a slide. Just so you know, 4-year. Our TIP is a short-range planning document. It's a 4-year program set of transportation projects in the region, and right now we have approximately $2.5 billion of total funds accounted for the TIP. Next slide, please. So we actually have kind of broken down into basically two parts of the amendments we're going to talk about today. The first set is changes requested by project sponsors, either to revise scope, update the termini, add funds, basically either to allow obligation or just to allow to move the next phase, either through NEPA design. And the next set we have, and I'll reach those in a second, are regarding our what we talked about in the past about our TAP dollars that could be lapsing, how we're addressing those with either GNRC providing awards directly to projects or flexing to our transit partners. So we'll start off with amendment number 31. This is the Lowry Street multimodal improvements. This is just updating the terminal. This is originally on our May agenda for TCC. We took it off, just had more conversation with our transit partners, but it's back on the amendment cycle this time. The only change here is revising the scope to remove the transit stop, is because the transit service no longer goes to this location. So we would really put the project in the TIP. There was transit service there, so it's no longer there. So we were moving just the transit stop. It's the only change in the project scope. Next is amendment 32. This is a Connect Downtown project. So originally this project into our TIP had 105 signals. We got with the city national requested, they are updating that to essentially make it a phase 1 project. This is to include 22 signalized intersections inside the downtown core. These are projects that are not being done necessarily right through Choose How You Move right now. So these are being done through the federal program, as national also simultaneously move together with their Choose How You Move intersections. So we're revising the scope to identify the 4 corridors. So Church Street, Montgomery Street, 7th Avenue, and Commerce Street corridors for the 22 intersections in the downtown area. And we're changed the project name to indicate essentially it's phase 1 as they move forward with future phases. That'll be tips. Next, we have Laverne Advanced Traffic Management System. This project is being updated to remove 2 intersections on the Old Nashville Highway portion of the termini. These projects are going to be funded locally and done through a local project. So they're still being completed, but they're not going to be completed as part of the federally funded project. So those projects, like I said, will be done, just not part of this project. Next, we have our Sumner County ADA Transition Plan implementation. We are revising the scope on this one to focus on the ADA improvements. So originally it was ADA improvements and also sidewalk gaps. We're going to talk in consultation with Sumner County. We're removing some of the scope just to focus on those ADA improvements as identified as their transition plan. And then we're also removing the local line of $128,000 due to the reduced scope. Next, we have our Hendersonville Signal Timing Optimization Program. This is adding a little over $200,000 of federal CMAQ funds to fiscal year 25 construction. This is to allow the project to be fully funded pre-bid to go to construction. So this is an additional CMAQ award through the state of Tennessee to allow them to have all the funds accounted for in their tip page to go to construction here in the coming weeks. Next, we have a new project. This is the McHatcher Parkway State Route 397 multi-use trail. This total project cost is just over $6.1 million. And we're only adding at this time a fiscal year 25 NEPA design and right-of-way line of $610,000, and this is all locally funded. So we moved to the next tip cycle. Construction was not expected to be completed in this tip cycle. So as we develop the next tip, we can get more information on the exact breakdown of the fiscal years for all the types of work and also the construction costs. But right now, this is, like I said, this new project being included in this tip. That way they can get started on their NEPA document and start the project development process. Next is one of our first projects. We talked about the tap laps, how GNRC is we looked at projects. This is one of the projects we thought was a good candidate to allow these funds to be obligated and avoid any lapsing of funds. We have approximately $2.8 million. Can you give a brief overview of tap funds that were identified by TDOT as due to lapse for the end of the fiscal year? 1.8 of those and some change, we're identifying it onto existing projects, traditional transportation projects as supplemental awards. The remainder, $1 million, will be added to our transit agency partners' tip pages, then to be flexed to the Federal Transit Administration. So this first one here is the Goodlettsville Traffic Flow Improvements Phase 3. We are adding $412,000 of federal tap dollars to fiscal year 25 construction. This will allow them, as they're getting ready to get there, this is one of the last things they need to go to construction, to update the tip page. So we are just updating total project cost and adding those tap funds to allow them to go to construction. And these tap funds will be used for the tap eligible work for the project. So this is ADA improvements, like anything from curb ramps, sidewalks, ped signals, everything of that nature that's included in the project is tap eligible. Next, we have the next phase of Goodlettsville. So this is the traffic flow improvement phase 4. This is to incorporate additional CMAQ funding of just over $180,000 of CMAQ funds to fiscal year 25 to the project overall. Sorry, this project is this is just for additional. They're going to obligate additional design dollars. This is just kind of additional need identified by the city. The CMAQ dollars are being added to this project. Next, we have our Mount Pleasant Downtown Revitalization Phase 1. This is shifting $413,000 of our federal fiscal year 25 UTAP funds from our active transportation program to this project. This project's already in construction, so this is a shortfall. So basically a local overmatch that we identified. So this is for additional eligible tap work. So some of that original funding line, so we see that there's still a $1.2 million locally funded line on this project. This is for ineligible items for federal funds, such as right-of-way relocations or right-of-way work that's already in public right-of-way. So it's not eligible for those federal dollars, things of that nature. So that's why you still see a local line included on the tip. It's just because those are not eligible. So almost more of a non-participating line versus necessarily locally funded. And the last of our traditional projects, transportation projects receiving funds, is our Town Center Trail Phase 3, Mount Juliet. This is adding $977,280 of our federal UTAP funds from our active transportation program for fiscal year 25 construction. We're also moving up the CMAQ line that was 2026 in the current tip to 2025. This will allow Mount Juliet to obligate these funds and before the end of the fiscal year to allow these funds to avoid lapsing, also allow the project to go to construction. Next, we have our active transportation page, regional active transportation program page. This is just reflecting the changes that I just discussed, talking about it's just over $1.8 million of federal funds being added to the 3 programs we just discussed. And in the end of the packet, we have another for our transit partners, just over $1 million being flexed, that will be flexed to their FTA programs. The next tip we have is our regional technology and transit program. This is to shift $1 million of our fiscal year 24 USVG dollars to the next page in our regional transportation data acquisition next amendment 43. This is to allow for continued purchase of data tools. I think the big one here, we have a signal analytics data set that we're purchasing to be used for all by GNRC, but also for all of our member communities as well as we go through, as our research team has provided in the past, such as replica or things of that nature are still are accessible to everyone as members of GNRC. Our last two tip amendments are related to our flexing of funds to our transit partners. The first one we have is adding $750,000 of our federal UTAP funds from a regional active transportation program to the bus stop improvements and passenger amenities page for National MTA. This is to allow, this will be, after this added to the tip, will be flexed to our, from FHWA to FTA to avoid any lapsing of funds, and they can use that in the next few years to address type eligible work. This is bus stop improvements, sidewalks, ADA improvements also. So anything that National MTA is doing for these within the bus stop and passenger amenities sections that's eligible for TAP work, they can use it for improvements. The last amendment we have in this cycle is our bus and bus facilities page for the Franklin Transit Authority. This is again shifting funds from our active transportation program in the amount of just over $334,000 of our UTAP funds that would lapse if they are not addressed in this cycle. This is similar to National Day, the same exact vein, bus stop improvements that have ADA upgrades, sidewalks, curb ramps, things of that nature, all eligible TAP work that will be done by the transit partner. And that is the existing, that's the remainder of our tip pages that we have for today, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any questions or any project you need greater clarification on before we move forward to vote? Everybody okay? All right, we have a motion and a second. We're going to be voting on resolution TBB 2025-010, resolution amending the Transportation Improvement Program for federal fiscal years 2023 through 2026. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? All right, we'll move on to our next item. TBB 2025-011, approving the Unified Transportation Planning Work Program. This requires a public hearing. Is anyone wishing to speak from the public on this item? Being none, we're going to ask for a motion a second to get it on the floor, and then we'll get a description. Do I have a motion? Have a second?
Second.
So next, we're going to turn it over to Daniel to give us some clarification on this.
All right, you've seen us working through this a couple of times. The intent here is to adopt the Transportation Planning Work Program, also known as the Unified Planning Work Program. And with our adoption, this satisfies federal requirements for programming of planning in the region, using that federal planning money to apply here in the GNRC or MPO region. And it also gives us a big opportunity, an important opportunity to do coordinated planning throughout the region to make sure we're touching the planning that needs to be done across county and agency lines here. So of course, we're adopting this today. That doesn't mean it can't be amended through our public participation policy and action of the TPB throughout the 2 years, but it gives us a framework for the next 2 years. This spans fiscal years 26 and 27, and will be effective in the federal new year of October 1st. So the UPWP document, won't go through every bullet point here, but it contains a lot of our planning topics and issues, the highlights and the outcomes of what we want to do for transportation planning in the region. And you can find that at the link on the slide there, simply gnrc.org/UPWP, where you can also find many of the previous planning reports and outcomes from the UPWPs and the actual previous UPWP documents. So this is kind of split into the GNRC activities that we'll be using for planning. And then you'll see a slide on some of our local partner planning activities. A lot of the ongoing iterative activities you see at the top, the regional transportation plan that you'll hear more about and have heard a lot about that we're updating this year. Transportation improvement plan, safety action plan, data acquisition analysis, and then new projects that we want to tackle in the next year. And this is very much the same list that you've seen on the draft forms that we've presented here before. One additional note that we have added to this final adoption is an airport accessibility study. That was on the recommendation of the Transit Alliance of Middle Tennessee. Also falling in line with some of the new federal initiatives that have come out in trying to break down barriers to getting to the airport. And of note, we're not looking at the BNA property and how to sort out the transportation there. They do a good job of that. We're looking at this region-wide and what are the barriers to get people to the airport from the entire region. So we also have the infrastructure and growth management, freight and goods, movement, connected greenways and multi-use paths, complete street assessment, and safety countermeasures implementation. That's the SS4A grant that we were awarded in the fall. And here's a list of the partner activities. Again, I won't go through every one of these, but I will note that the only update to this since the draft that you saw was we did add the microtransit study and implementation plan for the city of Murfreesboro. But we have major updates, planning and corridor studies, corridor and sub-area studies you can see here. The adoption schedule. So we're at the final bullet point here. You started hearing from us in January for the call for studies. We asked you all to submit studies. We put this UPWP together and submitted it in April to the state and the FHWA for review and approval of it. They came back with comments that were very minor and addressed those. And then we kind of refined it and polished it up. Presented it to TCC in June and made it available for public review. And the TCC endorsed it last week on July 9th. So we are here at the public adoption hearing by the TPB, and we have the requested action. Back to you, Chair.
Daniel, any questions about this program? Yes, sir. Mayor.
I'm kind of curious what the scope is as far as airport access. What's kind of the vision for that?
That's a great question. Can I toss that to you, Michael?
Happy to take that. Well, the final scope, we'll sit around with our transportation coordinating committee and figure out what the full list of outcomes that we're trying to achieve. But in some terms, we're trying to assess how easy or difficult, how affordable, unaffordable it is to get from your home location or business to BNA across all of Middle Tennessee to see if there are things that we can invest in or policies that we can make that remove those barriers for folks. There's some legislation pending right now. I think the Tennessee delegation has signed on to this called the Don't Miss Your Flight Act up in Congress that is looking at physical improvements that could be made within 5 miles of major airports across the nation. So this would be scoped to be in alignment with the vision of that legislation. But more importantly, just to make sure that it's, transportation isn't a challenge for people getting to and from the airport.
We're looking at an express lane from Franklin City Hall straight to the.
There'll be a lot of flyover, isn't there?
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, we have a proper motion and second for resolution TPB 2025-11. Resolution adopting the fiscal years 2026-2027 Unified Planning Work Program for the Nashville Metropolitan Planning Area. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed. All right, next we're going to move into information on the regular reports. So I'm going to turn it over to Michael. We talk about the transportation plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Pleasure to be with you again this month. I'll get us kicked off, but this will be a team effort to give you an update on where we stand with a major update to our regional transportation plan. As you all know, we are updating our 20-plus year planning document out to the year 2050. So this will essentially identify transportation funding priorities from fiscal year 2026 And then each year on out to 2025, there's a lot that goes into an update to the planning document. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping you up to date through each of these meetings. And then, of course, monthly, the Transportation Coordinating Committee is meeting under the leadership of that chair, Josh Student, who's opposite side of the room from me. Today's update includes a look at where we are with the candidate project list. These are the list of projects that resulted from the applications that you all submitted to us, as well as, so that includes city and county governments, transit agencies, the state DOT, other parties were also given the opportunity to submit applications to us. I'll give you a sense of where we are with the project list, what it represents in terms of value and number of projects. Maybe more importantly, for this part of the update, I'll show you how to access a real-time online database to be able to query and run reports on your own moving forward. It's also a tool that we'll use to communicate with each other as we go throughout the process. And I'm going to toss it over to Matthew to give y'all a preview of the county level workshops that are all scheduled for late July with your staff and elected officials who are interested in diving into the weeds as to how we're approaching the project evaluation and scoring and prioritization process. And then we'll wrap up our update today with a look at the ways that we've engaged consultants through the update process. We've talked about some of the components along the way, but this will be the first time you get a comprehensive look at how we're engaging consultants throughout the process. That's today's update. As we get into this, though, just this is a slide that we carry forward to each meeting, just tracking our progress through the steps that are involved in updating the plan. We're in this June to July timeframe where our staff and our consultants and your staff are focused on identifying transportation needs across the region. We're beginning to evaluate your proposed projects for their ability to address those needs. And then we're focused on setting up these county workshops here in late July. August and September will be really important months as we begin to finish the project evaluation process, begin to look at ranked priorities across the region, and then relative to the financial forecast that we have. Eventually, we need a fiscally constrained plan that goes into the document. So we need to figure out of the $15 billion that we might have in the plan's budget from federal, state, and local matching sources, how we intend to allocate that funding to individual projects or programs over the next 25 years. So that'll be a really important discussion to make sure everybody's comfortable with that rate list of priorities. The planning document will also, maybe even more so, need to focus on the unfunded priorities of the region so that we're doing the case making necessary to convince folks that we need more resources to improve our transportation outcomes. But August, September is really when you want to start paying attention to the draft plan as we will begin preparing for the first draft presentation to the policy board in October and November. I believe it's a November presentation to you all. After that presentation, we'll submit it to the state and federal partners for their review and comment. While they're working on their piece of it, we'll be focusing on those unfunded needs with you all to try to bring some attention to those projects. And then once we get the federal state comments, we'll marry it all up together into a single package, get that out for public review and comment, and back in front of you by March of 2026 for adoption. That's a look at where we are and the overall progression. Again, I'll start us off today with an update on our candidate project list. For this, I'm going to toggle over to the web browser and show you the online tool that's available to you. And if you have your laptop out and are interested in following along or even creating an account into the software, feel free to do so here in real time. So thank you for your patience as I toggle screens. I'm going to go, I think this URL was on the slide that I just moved away from, but it's gnrc.org/app, /2050 RTP. No login is required to access the information in the database, but there are some additional functionality that you will have access to if you do create an account. Creating an account is very easy and instantaneous, the access that it provides. Okay, so what you're looking at here is the list of all the candidate projects that are currently in consideration for the anticipated future federal funding over the next 25 years. I'll talk a little bit more about the list in a minute. Let me give you a quick tour of the overall scope of the application. So all projects tab is all the projects, obviously. All notes tab is an aggregate of all the notes that have been attached to individual projects. So it's just an easy way to access all the chatter within the system related to projects. You cannot add a note here. You'd have to go to the specific project of interest and then add a note there. Once you do, it shows up on this tab here. The reports tab is tracking various metrics related to the project list. So for example, a couple of these that would be of interest is here's a table showing you the number and total value of the projects by improvement type. Each of these tables are drillable. So if you're interested in seeing the 4 proposed bridge improvement projects, just click into the cell. Then you can see the project list for that category and then dive deeper through clicking on the details button for the individual projects. This is pretty self-explanatory, and there's different ways that we can report out on statistical information representing these projects that we'll probably continue to add to this tab here. But this is high-level information about the nature of the projects that have been submitted. I'll pause here and just sort of acknowledge that we have 407 projects that have been submitted to us by local governments, transit agencies, TDOT, or that GNRC has put on the table because they're legacy projects that were not resubmitted, and we didn't want to forget about those as we go through the process. Together, they represent about $14 billion worth of work in present day dollars. Much of that is based on rough planning estimates, which tend to underestimate the true cost of projects. So the present day value of the 407 projects is likely in excess of $14 billion. It's also important to remember that the federal law requires us to inflate these costs to a year of expenditure. So the cost as represented in the final document will be inflated based on some assumptions that we'll share with you to the year of expenditure. That's where we stand in terms of the value and the number of projects that are in the mix right now for consideration. The next tab is help and resources. And here you have consolidated list of links to other resources provided by GNRC. So the Transportation Improvement Program, which is also an interactive online map and database for all the projects that are currently programmed. And the tip is linked from here, as well as the software that you use to apply for your projects is linked from here, and then useful links provided by TDOT and other partners are also aggregated here. I won't get into all that right now. And then finally, if you are interested in creating an account, to do so, you would go to the login button, user login, click this, fill out, hit the sign up button, and you'll get an account instantly. I'm going to log in and show you what additional features you'll get if you do create an account. So if you create an account, you'll get this new tab called My Projects. This is an opportunity if you're just interested in a space to focus on your projects. You still have access to all the projects, but just as a matter of convenience, you'll get a My Projects tab. The way to set that project list is under account settings. Once you get this created, go to account settings. There is a field for organization, and you can select which entities, projects you want to appear in your My Project list. Many of you are probably just going to be interested in, like you're going to be interested in Nolensville's projects, right? But if you are working for an entity in Davidson County, you might be interested in Metro Nashville, WeGo, TDOT. All of you might be interested in TDOT. You can pull those into your My Project list as well. But that's how you control what appears there is this organization field, which allows you to select multiple entities.
Hey, Michael, is there a restriction of who can create an account?
Not in real time, but we monitor the logins. Now, there's no additional, you don't get access to any additional information, and you don't immediately right now with the permission settings have the ability to change any information even with a login account. So it's pretty protected from outside access right now. But if I'm answering your question,
It's not something you want us to distribute to the public.
it's fair game. Yeah, sometimes we can't pay people enough to look at this stuff. So yeah, we have no really. This is I think it's awesome if the public is interested in what's in the mix, but this is mostly a tool at this stage for us to work together on the development of the plan. And there could be some components of this that are intentionally public facing down the road. but nothing is hidden from view right now. It's just whether or not you have an account and do a little bit of customization. Eventually, we might open up some write access to allow you to change details on your project. And that, if that's the case, then that would be, you would have, as a project sponsor, a certain permission set that a member of the public would have to be able to change the details. But that's not a thing right now. It's a good question. Okay, the request that we have right now to your staff, some of which are sitting around the table here, but at the Transportation Coordinating Committee, we asked each of the staff members from the participating jurisdictions of the MPO process to review the project details that we have incorporated into the system, which largely come from your applications, but there have been some tweaks based on conversations, namely the first round of workshops that we had with you all back in April, May. So review the details, make sure, especially termini, cost estimates, project descriptions. Those are really important to kind of make sure we're getting it right. And then the other is the geography. There is for the My Projects tab and the All Projects tab, there is a link at the top of those pages that will take you to the a mapping, Esri mapping software that allows you to drill into the individual project. I click on any one of these and find out a little bit more information about the project. But we really need you to verify that, particularly if it's a proposed on-road improvement with from X to Y, just make sure the geography is correct. And that's important because a lot of what we do as staff to evaluate the merit of your project is rooted in the context for that project. Is it in a high crash area? Is it in a highly congested area? Is it serving to create new jobs that are part of a land use or economic development plan? So the geography is really important here. And we want to make sure we didn't misinterpret any of those termini or the project locations. So the best way to find your project on this map is to take this application ID, this first column on any of these project lists, 2575, for example, just put that into the search bar. And that'll find your project for you. Just zoom in and take a look at the geography. In most cases, it's going to be correct, but we don't want to make that assumption. If you find discrepancies in the geography or the project details, you have a couple of options. You can just email probably Matthew's your best personal contact, individual contact here. But honestly, the preferred way is to go into the project. And so let me go into one of these projects. I'll go into Weekly Lane widening in Smyrna, click into the project. Now I'm seeing all the project description, the termini, the cost estimate, the source of the cost estimate, so on and so forth. So you're reviewing that. You're also looking at the map. If you find discrepancies, the best thing to do is go to the bottom of that page and add a project note. Select provide comment or make request, whatever is the most appropriate type of comment that you want to leave, and just notate it there. And we're tracking this, and we can resolve it back through a project note, but we'll get the GIS updated, and then we need to quickly get into our project evaluation process. That GIS is about the last step we need to take to get to that point to get ready for our August workshops with you all. So that's the request that's out there right now. We really need your focus over the next few days. By Monday COB, hopefully you and your staff have had a chance to go in and just make sure all the details are correct. Any questions about that? There is a recording of the software on, I think, the TCC YouTube channel, which I can give you a link to if you weren't. This is actually being recorded as well. So when we post the video for this meeting, it'll be on your TBB channel. So I do encourage you to create an account just to take it. An advantage of the additional features. And then as we do open up write access, you'll be ready to go to make direct edits to the system. Any questions, reactions to the project list or guidance for us?
Well, I'd like a little more explanation. 407 projects. Are they all new? $14 billion of total projects. We've got 15 billion. Now that didn't jive in my head. Help me work through that.
Yeah, so right now,
Because I always thought we didn't have enough money.
we don't.
Okay.
Let me answer that question using the current plan. The current plan includes a $10.5 billion fiscally constrained plan. The $10.5 billion is essentially At the time we developed that plan, we were receiving around $250 million a year as a region from federal sources. We add the state and local matching dollars to that and project that out to the future with about a 2% annual growth rate of revenue. That's how we got to $10.5 billion. What's in the plan far exceeds $10.5 billion in terms of costs. But a subset of what's in the plan is constrained by that $10.5 billion. So if you look in the current plan, you can see how we intend to spend $10.5 billion, but you'll see a longer list of projects that have costs that far exceed the $10.5 billion. We'll be in the same situation this time. The amount of revenue we have for a fiscally constrained plan is going to be higher because our baseline has increased in recent years as our region has grown relative to the rest of the country, which drives the formula distribution of funds. But it'll also increase in large part because of the passage of the Choose How You Move initiative, which will bring to the table one of the biggest things that was missing from our last plan, which was dedicated funding for transit that not only pays for projects that are on the list, but then begins to leverage additional federal dollars through competitive programs. And because we have the dedicated funding in place, we have a little bit more leeway of baking that into our assumptions for the outer years of the plan. So your perception that the cost of the projects we need to do is less than the revenue we're going to have is true and will continue to be true as we develop this plan. What the exact amounts are in terms of the total project cost, how much revenue we have, and how much unfunded needs we have are those will be answers that questions that we'll answer over the next couple of months with you.
Great explanation and good information. Thanks for all that.
You're welcome. Any other questions about the application or just where we are with the project list? Matthew's going to talk in a minute about what we're going to have on the agenda for you all at your county level workshops. Okay, Matthew.
All right, well, thank you, members of the Transportation Policy Board. As Michael mentioned, he gave you a high-level schedule overview. I'm going to zoom in a little bit to kind of our main interactions with staff and the team and by the county level workshops that we're having. You saw we have a large project list. There's already been lots of kind of impromptu conversations, emails, phone calls with staff, et cetera. But there are three main touch points. We have scheduled touch points with staff to review the project list. As you'll see on the screen, we did already go through the April meetings. These were largely based on just the facts of the projects that were submitted, make sure we understand where they are, the costs, et cetera. Just make sure we're getting that list together. And as Michael said, we're finalizing that step right now. So if you can review those lists, if you see any problems, let us know. As we move into July and August, we start to move into the actual prioritization of projects in kind of two phases. So July, we will have the preliminary evaluation results. So as Michael said, we have the spatial data for all the projects, we're putting them into an analysis tool, and we're comparing them against those the policy framework that the board adopted in May to try to understand which projects are hitting the criteria and goals identified by the policy board. So we will be reviewing that. I have some calendar information that I'll show on the screen on the moment, but this is the first chance to do that and to just catch any big questions, anything where a project maybe didn't evaluate as well as we expected, and if there's small changes in scope that we need to do to kind of bump that up or down. Then moving into August, these are not scheduled yet. July is scheduled. I'll show you those. But in August, we'll start to have the financial data that we were just talking about. So we'll start to be able to put them into a cost constrained list to say, these are the projects that evaluated well. These are the funding sources available to them, and let's review that with you. So that said, I'll move to the scheduling. In the last couple of days, we have scheduled digital via Teams workshops in each county. We like to group people in the counties together to talk about the project list so we understand that regional coordination aspect. You can see the scheduled times on the screen here now. These invites are out. So if you want to be on this and you are not on it now, please let me know. We can get you invited. There should be members from your staff already invited here. But again, these start next week and move into the end of July. That is all I have unless there are questions. So I will hand it back to Michael.
Yes, sir. With regard to attendees for those, yes, I have received an invite from one in Williamson. What kind of room are we meeting in these places? If elected officials want to tag along, who all can come, how many can come, what's,
Yeah, so the first round we did in person, hosted in each county. The second round we are moving online for. It's just a little bit easier to facilitate. So it is open if elected officials would like to attend, that's okay. It is going to be a detailed level staff review. We're scheduling up to 2 hours, so expect to get in the weeds a little bit, but it can be open to a larger group if interested.
Thank you, Matthew. Any questions before we move on to the last piece of this information item? Awesome. Well, just wanted to, before we get to the end of the meeting, give you a sense of how we're engaged with consultants as we go through this process. We're really proud of the amount of work that we do in-house. We've done this for the last 15 plus years. We have a lot of technical expertise on our staff and are pretty hands-on. I think the consultants will probably attest to that. It'd be challenging sometimes when we're trying to do division of labor, but we like to be part of building the ship as a team. But we do rely on consultant expertise and their independent perspective, judgment as we go through the process. I'm just going to walk you through a list of things that we've already completed, a list of things that we're currently working on or about to get underway, and a list of things still to come as we go through this update process. So in terms of completed activities, and you've seen the product of this work over the last couple of years, but this gives you a sense of who we've relied on in the private sector for some really important activities related to the transportation plan. This slide particularly is important for almost any of the work we do at GNRC, whether it's the update to our comprehensive economic development plan or the work we're doing on watershed-based planning or other environmental planning that we're doing for emissions reduction or open space conservation. A lot of our regional planning is derived from the analytics and the forecasting that the MPO program produces. So you all know we do population employment forecast out to the year 2050. We rely on a national forecast that is disaggregated to counties across the nation for the population employment totals and then the details for people and jobs in terms of the demographic, socioeconomics, or economic sectors. Our value add is that we build the models that predict where those people and jobs are going to land at the parcel level across Middle Tennessee. And our forecast is an annual forecast throughout the entire horizon. So we have forecasts from our base year, which is roughly 2020, thereabouts, all the way out to the year 2050. So we're predicting where people and jobs and the types of people and the types of jobs will land at the parcel level. That's dictated by just market influences that are understood in the model, as well as your local land use policy. So many of you were very important to this process, and that you provided your land use policies, your zoning ordinances, which are the public policy constraints for growth. But we relied on UrbanSim and their software to do that forecast. A lot of in-house expertise, a lot of working with you, but UrbanSim was the consultant we used to develop that land development forecast. And then we have a travel demand model. We have a couple of travel demand modeling tools. One is a long range. It can do an annual forecast out to we typically do these in horizons, but this is basically simulating the daily travel behavior of all 2 million Middle Tennesseans that are within the metropolitan planning area. Based on a lot of research that is done over the years, but it's basically simulating the daily travel behavior. Everybody lives here and all the traffic that is coming into and through our region. And this is the tool that we use then to predict traffic volumes and individual segments of roadway. And then we can translate that into performance measures. So does that create congestion through reduced travel times or are we seeing an excess of volume to capacity ratio on the network? We also use this tool to predict transit ridership. It's a multimodal model. It predicts not only where people are traveling, but the mode of transportation and the pathways that they would take to get from point A to point B. So that's the activity-based travel model. We use RSG out of Vermont Resource Systems Group, so their old name, to calibrate, to build, calibrate, and get that model validated within the standards set by TDOT. What we're working on now, we've got several consultants on call available to us. Yes, ma'am.
May I pose a question about the travel demand model? May I? Okay. I apologize. Is that appropriate? Okay. Oh, so I'm just wondering, TDOT has approved metrics, and I'm just wondering the model balancing like level of service to induce demand factors, right? So often we widen roadways to improve level of service, but that induces demand, and we spend a lot of money on widening and then that doesn't help. So can you speak to within the constraints that TDOT has, how we kind of set that model to factor for induced demand?
Yeah, what TDOT is primarily looking for is how close are we to predicting the current day observations? What's the margin of error there? Are we within tolerance? That's what they're mostly focused on. But we drive a lot of the research questions the models are being built to answer. And so our model is useful in analyzing the scenario that you're describing. And fun fact, when we adopted the current plan, we did share metrics from the model that showed that, if you're ready for this, that the amount of traveling that we do in congested conditions is greater as a result of our investments than it is without the investments. And that's the induced demand, right? It's making accessible transportation facilities where we're not able to eliminate the congested conditions, right? It doesn't mean we should be doing the improvements, but we should be realistic about the benefits and, and understand the reasons why we are making improvements to facilities. So the model can be used for all types of research questions. And then that's coupled with a micro simulation model that we have that could actually zoom into a segment of roadway, an intersection, a series of intersections, and then that will simulate the actual movements of vehicles, which is a little bit more useful for engineering purposes, but also it's more granular in terms of questions that you might have that are more local in nature. So we have a variety of tools that we could use to model scenarios.
Thank you so much. Appreciate
You're
it.
welcome. Okay, so for ongoing activities, I don't want to put anybody to sleep here, so I'll try to be brief. And if you have any interest in any more detail in any of this stuff, I'm happy to talk more about them. But we're using Birch Transportation in a partnership with Kevin. Is that Kinley Horn? Yes. Yeah. But Birch and Kinley Horn are working with us on updating our bicycle and pedestrian level of service analysis for every federal aid eligible network roadway across the region. So that's typically collectors, major collectors, urban collectors and above. We are doing an assessment of how easy, difficult, comfortable, uncomfortable it is for you to make a walking or biking trip on that facility. There's a lot of variables that go into that, but it is essentially a score, A through F score for each segment of roadway across the region, not local roads, but collectors and above. And then we also have a model that's being developed through that same partnership that predicts the propensity. It assesses the propensity for walking and biking trips. Some of that might already be activated. There might be walking and biking there, but based on the combination of land uses and the facilities that exist, how many walking and biking trips should you expect to see if you provided suitable facilities, for example? So it helps us understand where the demand for walking and biking is across the region based on current policies and current conditions. But the cool thing about these tools is that then you throw at different scenarios. What if we change the land use pattern or change the network? How will that impact walking and biking demand? So that's another tool that we have available. Both of these tools are part of the way we're evaluating projects. So if you're addressing deficiency in level of service for walking and biking on a corridor through your proposed improvement because you're improving the facilities, that's going to be to your advantage. That's how we're evaluating that. We also are using Kinley Horn to update our system preservation and asset management recommendations. Part of this is just trying to understand how much it's going to cost us to keep our roadways, bridges, and transit systems in a state of good repair. There are standards we're trying to achieve for maintenance levels, and we can forecast the cost that will be necessary to keep that infrastructure at those standards, or we can throw into that model our current level of spending and forecast what the condition is expected to be. And one of the things, and shout out to Jay, but one of the things that we've noticed is that we typically see that we're well overperforming in terms of interstate conditions and the way that we've spent money on maintenance over the last years. Doesn't hold true the more local you get on the network, though. We're using a combination of CDM Smith, Banesh, and Nelson Nygaard to help with production of independent cost estimates for projects. On-road improvements, that could be a roadway widening, roadway reconstruction, a sidewalk project, a bicycle lane project, but it's an on-road improvement with a known termini. CDM Smith is going to be providing cost estimates for construction, and then Manesh is providing cost estimates for right-of-way and utilities based on the information that's available. And then there's a 10% overlap where both consultants are doing full cost estimation, just so we have a control there between the two methodologies that might be at play. And then Nelson Nygaard is taking the lead on off-road and transit cost estimates. So if we've got greenways that are not part of the roadway network or transit service that's not on the roadway network, Nelson Nygaard will be assisting with those. We've got Banesh helping us with our coordinated human services transportation plan update. And we've got Kinley Horn working with us on pulling together a report on what we have heard from the public and stakeholders over the last 10 plus years. So, community engagement, public and stakeholder outreach is an ongoing thing. And often what we do is appears that we're starting from scratch every time we begin to engage the public. And I think it's really important that we can easily point to the things that we have heard so that first people could say, I still feel the same way, or my attitude has shifted. So I think that will be a really useful document to a lot of us in this room to just have that super accessible to the folks that we're working with on the ground before we strategize on what is next from an engagement standpoint. And then we have Stantec under contract. As our GIS work exceeds our internal capacity, they're there to help us make sure that we stay on track with schedules. Upcoming activities, we're going to be doing a high injury network analysis with KCI, local transportation engineering firm, historically known as RPM Transportation, many of you know. Traffic simulation model that we just talked about, that's RK&K. We're working on emissions reduction strategies across all sectors, including transportation. We have ICF and EY, formerly Ernst Young, under contract to help us with that. And then we will be getting task orders out to consultants soon for financial benchmarking. This is where we compare how we're funding transportation against other regions across the country to figure out what the differences are, what we can learn from other regions in terms of strategies to move forward on our projects given financial limitations. We did a managed lane study with PB, which is now WSP, 10 years ago or so. We plan to update that. That's a look at best practices across the nation for managed lanes concepts or practices, the choice lanes being an example of that. So we'll give you essentially a white paper that helps you understand what's happening across the country, and then an initial assessment of which corridors within our region make the most sense for those practices. And then as we get into kind of wrapping up the planning process, it's really important that we're helping people to see what we're proposing. So we've got some resources budgeted for enhanced visualizations. It could be static renderings of before and after shots that you're used to, but also computer animations of before and after, and just the mobility benefits that come from some of these projects. We're likely to invest those resources in the projects that we can't afford, though, that are really important to get done, more than the projects that have been in the works for a long time. Any questions about any of that? That's a lot, but I wanted you to see, often we are surface level. It doesn't feel surface level sometimes at these meetings, but it is surface level as to what's actually happening across the hallway by our staff and consultants and your staff, but happy to answer any questions here. All this relates, this is the UPWP stuff that Daniel was talking about earlier. When you adopt that program, you're authorizing us to engage in these types of activities.
Michael, I think it'll be important, and you're probably thinking about this, but whenever we do any of that, to start looking, if we're going to develop policy, look at what's changing at the federal level, and what's coming. And I know some of them are not quite there yet. Some of them will keep coming. So just to keep that in mind as we develop policy, so we account for what's coming from the federal level.
Yeah, I agree with that, Felix, and I think that the uncertainty can't be the reason not to do it. You just
Absolutely.
come up with some what if scenarios and figure out what you're going to do in any event, right? So I appreciate that comment. Anyone else? All right, Mr. Chair, turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you, Michael. Next up, we go to regular reports. First up is TDOT. Jay, are you giving a report?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Mayor Chairman, thanks for recognizing me. Good morning, everybody. Jay Norris, TDOT Region 3 Director, so I work here in Middle Tennessee. I just want to give you guys a few updates. The first is Commissioner Ely has stepped back from his duty as Commissioner of Transportation. He's still Deputy Governor. As of last week, Commissioner Will Reed was sworn in Thursday of last week. He's our new commissioner. So with that, Commissioner Ely's Chief of Staff is transitioning out of his role. So we'll have a gap to fill there. Will Reed was our chief engineer. He's been promoted. So we'll have a deputy commissioner there to fill. And then our CFO, Mr. Joe Galbato, is retiring in September. And we've hired a wonderful ad is Natalie Kristoff from Nevada who's joined our team. So there's a lot of transition in the senior leadership of the department right now. I wanted y'all to know what was going on. On the federal highway side of things, I'm sure y'all are aware, they've had both layoffs and buyouts, and their staff has become very thin across the nation. And so they're having to share functional duties across state lines, which is new. And so we're seeing stuff approved in North Carolina and things in Kentucky. And so there's a backlog of federal actions that have to be approved through our stewardship and oversight agreement. And so that could affect some local programs. I wanted y'all to be aware of that. We have not seen any of our projects delayed yet. Team's done a good job to get things in front of federal highway, make sure their things are prioritized and haven't missed out on things yet. But I wanted y'all to be aware of that. They're a good partner, and they're having to work through this issue to reorg, but I want everybody to be aware of what's going on. As far as the construction side of things, our new diversion diamond interchange at Donaldson Pike by the airport is open and operational. We're happy with what we're seeing. We called this stage phase 3A according to our plans, and we worked with the airport to accelerate this work. And so contractor will be getting an acceleration payment and a bonus for this work. There's now a pause because the airport has what the road system at the airport, the Terry project, is going to step in and do some work on our old footprints. We're having a pause, and then our contractor will come back and complete, 3% of the work. It's majority that no one will notice, to be honest with you, but that's happening. So we're happy about that. Our line by 65 on the north side of Davidson County and the Sumner County is underway. Jones Brothers is doing a good job up there. That project has a no excuse bonus tied to it. I think a max of 5.4 million. We get great performance on schedules when we have those kinds of bonus. So we anticipate that will go well. August letting, Mayor Chairman, Portland Bypass, State Route 109, we'll be taking bids on that. We're excited about that. And then October letting in Murfreesboro, State Route 268 Thompson Lane, we'll be taking bids on that. Those are both around $130 million projects. So I'm proud of our team. John Story, is John, he raised your hand. He's our Director of Project Management. His team is, we've had a tremendous year. We've probably done more than 2 times our normal workload. This year, we're probably approaching between $700 and $800 million worth of work this year. So very proud of that group. Statewide partnership. So we released our 10-year plan based on the recurring and non-recurring dollars we received in the budget this past time. And so you should all be aware of our new 10-year plan and what's going on there. I'll be glad to talk to you about those things if you're not. Our statewide partnership program has reopened. It opened June 27th and it closes August 29th. So this should be, I know this is the 3rd time we've done this. We move the dates every time, but I think this is it. So this is the open enrollment period for your road insurance. But I want to make sure everybody understands that process. If you have any questions, please come talk to me about it. We will evaluate those through the fall, and then we plan to release our 10-year plan in conjunction with our 3-year plan that we do on the legislative level that we're required to do. So I want to make sure those things were covered. on the choice lane front, we're in the proposal phase. We're seeing alternative technical concepts come in from the developers. We're reviewing those. Something TDOT will be doing, Nashville, Laverne, Smyrna, is I think we need a city agreement on what the developer, if they needed to close roads during construction, just kind of how that dance would happen. So we'll be working with your staffs on those kind of things. Wanted to give you all the heads up on that. That's it for me. Thank you for your time, sir.
Jane, question for Jay?
So as evidence to, he mentioned how they're doing twice as much. A few minutes ago, I spoke about critical about TDOT, something 4 years ago. They have finished 3 projects for us in really the past 4 or 5 months, smaller projects, and it's noticeable. It's absolutely good.
So we're expecting some good videos from you, Jamie, talking about how wonderful TDOT is.
Keep those while I drive.
Any other questions for Jay or his team? You can always catch them after the meeting too. They're always willing to answer anything that you have. Next up is our TCC report, Josh.
Sir, thank you. I don't have very much. I just was thinking as we were talking at the local level, things could be pretty contentious and that kind of thing. But I think at the regional level, something that the staff is saying, I know at least I'm seeing in Sumner County, the amount of collaboration and partnership that we see nowadays, that John Story and his folks are worth their weight in gold at TDOT. They meet regularly with the folks at City of Gallatin and Sumner County about a very important project. We're working with them on. We really appreciate that. They've always been great to work with, but it just seems like people are taking things to another level. And same thing with the GNRC staff. I think the strategic moves that Michael has made, and in conjunction with the board, as far as the transportation and infrastructure department that you've set up, we definitely see, these meetings you're doing, that's, doing what I do for a living, what we all do for a living. That's incredibly intensive work that you are doing to take the time to meet with everybody. And so we really appreciate you guys doing that. And, with regard to the tip, you saw all those tip amendments. Those are little projects that are very important to a whole lot of folks. Ours is one of them. Keeping those projects moving. I can't say enough good things about the MPO staff, GNRC staff for helping everybody to keep things moving. So appreciate TDOT and appreciate the MPO. I think things are going great. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Just real quickly for myself, and we have seen a lot of good progress. Thank you, and for everyone. One thing that could be a concern is that we want to ensure we don't lose any momentum with the local programs, right? And that commitment to revamp all of that. And those weekly meetings that we were doing, I know Taylor was on those as well. They were great. I mean, just staff from across the area were on those weekly meetings, and we have a lot of turnover in cities, or we have limited staff, and we're trying to bring somebody on board and up to speed, and they're trying to figure out right away or NEPA or whatever the question is. And having those were, I think, very valuable. And I hope that we'll see more of that and more engagement of local programs, because it's, when we're limited on a city side, for sure, it's all the help we can get on that would be great. So I look forward to that. So thank you on that. Next up, staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we're getting close to time, but if you could give us 8 more minutes, I think we can get through the remainder of our information today. I'll first start with Taylor to give you our regular tip status report.
Thank you, Michael. So we don't have a lot of projects that were obligated in this past cycle. I just want to note that, as you see here, went from pretty near parity, but with the long lapse of time, we see that now we're at 60% of our FHWA funds obligated, now to 73% of the tip. I do expect that to close as we get through the end of the fiscal year. Usually, as we get through the August distribution, things of that nature, we usually see a lot of obligations in the last 2 months. Obviously, we have a lot of projects in this amendment cycle that are due to obligate to prevent fund lapsing for the end of the fiscal year. But one other thing I know is the only thing we had open was the Safe Streets for All grant, and that is now closed. So there's no federal grant available right now. So please take a look. You see the obligations for every project type or program type in TIP and see what they're doing. But I expect to see more movement here in the next month's or two's status report for obligations.
Thank you, Taylor. Any questions for Taylor? You do have the obligations report in your packets. If you see discrepancy with that information from your local knowledge, just let us know. Next, I'll go briefly to Andrew on our team, who heads up the work that we do with the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations, which is TASR, who reports to the legislature on infrastructure needs across the state, we have a role in collecting information for them. Andrew's going to talk a little bit about what we've done this year to enhance the tool that we use for TASER that I think will provide a lot of benefit to you all locally.
Great. Thank you, Michael. TPP members, I'm going to talk briefly about this new online software tool that GNRC developed to help track capital improvement projects for our Penny process. So first, what is Penny? It refers to the Public Infrastructure Needs Inventory, and we complete it annually for TASER, which is the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations. The purpose of Penny is to provide the state legislature and then state agencies with important information about funding needs for infrastructure projects throughout Tennessee. There are a wide variety of infrastructure assets we look at. You can see there's transportation, waste and wastewater, schools, public facilities, et cetera. So this year we inventoried approximately 450 school projects and then a little over 1,200 general inventory projects. And we're excited this year about this new tool that we developed to help not only provide more efficient tracking of projects throughout the region, but also to pursue other opportunities like grant writing, other projects as we go forward. And do feel free to reach out as we move forward if you have any updates on projects or other new projects that have been ongoing, but we'll be reaching out shortly for next year's inventory. And then if you have any other questions, you can always go to gnrc.org/PINI. And that'll give you more information on the Penny process. There's a video tutorial. And then always feel free to reach out to staff too if you also have other questions. We're always willing to help you with that. So thank you. And if you have any questions, let us know.
Thank you, Andrew. And I think if you are a community that doesn't have any capital improvements planning software, if you're tracking your projects in Excel or Word documents or napkins, feel free to use this tool to just keep track of your capital improvement projects. I want to talk about upcoming meetings, but really we've got really important information to give you here in a second. We've got the August 6th Transportation Coordinating Committee meeting. That's a regular meeting of the TCC that Josh leads. We received 3 CMAQ awards from TDOT that barely missed our public noticing cutoff for this TIP amendment cycle. These are lapsing CMAQ funds. So we need to get those amended into the TIP as quickly as possible. We need to get this all done back to TDOT so they can do what they need to do by the middle of August. The best strategy to achieve this is to essentially schedule a Transportation Policy Board adoption hearing of these amendments in conjunction or to have to occur immediately preceding the TCC work that day. So staff just passed around the proxy forms. So if you already know that you're not going to be able to make that Wednesday, August 6th meeting, 10:30 in this room. If you can go ahead, just designate your voting alternate today, that would be great. If not before then, if you can't be there, we will need a quorum to get this money into the TIP, to get it obligated. We're talking about $6 million here. I'm going to turn it to Taylor real quickly. If you just go through the 3 projects so this body gets a preview of what the action will be on August 6th.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So like Michael said, we have roughly $6 million of CMAQ funds that to identify that need to be either spent or flexed to an agency to allow those funds to be used in the region without being lapsed. They sent award letters out and they identified 2 of our partners, so National MTA and then RTA Williamson County. So I'll start with the list. The first project we have is the 10 van full vehicles purchase. This is for the RTA Williamson County, the VanStar program. This is a little over $300,000 of CMAQ funds we flexed. So once again, this is an existing project in the TIP. The next 2 projects are new projects that the CMAQ office worked with National MTA and we go to develop for this additional flex dollars. First we have is a transit emergency vehicle signal priority intersection improvement project. It's a mouthful. It's talking about probably some portion of that would be preemption, but just software and intersection improvements allow, the transit and emergency vehicles to have better access and through intersections. That's adding $2 million in federal CMAQ funds. And our last one is a park and ride facility in Davidson County, and this is be added for National MTA WEGO Public Transit. This is adding $3.6 million in federal CMAQ funds. One thing to note here, these funds do not include local match. So all of these will have a 20% local match basically to unlock the full amount of CMAQ funds for each of these.
Any questions for Taylor again? These will be properly noticed. It'll follow the public participation plan requirements, but we do intend to notice for a TPP adoption hearing August 6th at 10:30. If you can't make it, you've got the form to designate your voting alternate. Back over to upcoming meetings. The other thing I want to just promote real quick is that August 20th, that's we'll have our regional council body meeting in this room. Update on some really important regional initiatives, particularly related to the brownfields inventory work that we're doing with TDEC and local governments across the region. So we'll give you a status update, may have some requests for you there, talk about implications. And then the other is we'll give you an update on our emissions reductions work that we're doing with TDEC and EPA for our GNRC footprint, plus a few additional counties that are in the MSA, but not included in the GNRC. So really important meeting, August 20th as well. Look forward to seeing you there. With that, Mr. Chair, we'll conclude our staff reports.
Thank you. Any questions for Michael? Any other business that we need to be aware of today? Yes, sir.
Just want to take a moment to introduce Sabrina Sussman, who is with us in Nashville as our Chief Program Officer for Choose How You Move, which is our transit improvement program. We do certainly expect this to be something of regional advantage. The park and ride location design, the express service, the RTA enhancements we've got in the program. Dedicated funding is such a big deal. Michael alluded to it earlier, but we do expect this to be something that aligns across local needs, regional needs, lots of coordination underway with TDOT. So I'm glad she was able to join us today, and please do visit with her if you have questions or feedback on where we are with implementation. Just as a reminder, 4 key principles of that plan are sidewalk, signal, service, and safety. This past weekend, well, actually 2 weekends ago, WeGo initiated service changes that are a direct result of that program being implemented. So excited to start to see midday and weekend and evening frequency improvements, lots of paratransit improvements for our disability community, and again, starting to see some regional enhancements take shape. But glad to work with all of you on successful implementation of that.
Thank you, Mayor. Anyone else have anything they want to share? All right, we're looking for one more motion then, I guess.
Move to adjourn.
All right. Thank you guys for being here.